We're going to be in Proverbs. You want to turn to Proverbs chapter 1 for me? We're going to be there this morning. You're like, where's the notices? I love the notices. Well, we're going to do them at the end today. Toby's going to just share some of that a little bit later on. What I realized as well, just over the summer, we're not doing a camp out, we're not doing a commission festival, we're not doing anything this summer, and so it's like there's not really many notices for the summer. Normally we're like, oh, if you need to pack the van to go to commission festival, or we would share things like that, and there's nothing of that to share this summer. And I thought I'd get can we do a clapometer for those who would love an event next year and those who wouldn't, all right? Just a clapometer, and let's see. So if you would like to do something as a church together, don't worry, we're not necessarily saying camping, for those who are like, I'm not camping. If you want to do something as a church, can you clap for me? Wonderful. Now, that's a good clap. Let's get carried on as well. Right. If you don't want to do something, do you want to clap? Well done, Natty, for being boring. So we all know who to talk to, everyone. Get on him. It's just interesting. That was for my own benefit. That's got absolutely nothing to do with anything we're doing this morning or moving forward, but it was cool to do. So we live in an age, don't we, of advice. So I should have said this before, like to the guys going to New Day, like shower regularly, and at a certain time as well at New Day is like rough as. But yeah, we're in a world of advice. There's loads of advice we can give. As a parent, I give my kids advice all the time, probably too much advice. And to be honest, all of us are probably in that place. There's endless advice. There's endless advice that we can get on how to cook. I was cooking something the other day. I cooked a beef joint on a barbecue. I was well chuffed with myself. But it's like, this is how you cook it. And then this other person says, this is how you cook it. You get advice on how to manage and make your money go further. Martin Lewis gives loads of advice. Some of it, I don't have a clue what he's talking about. But some of it's helpful. Some of it just goes over my head. We get advice in how to make sure that we stay fit and lean and healthy and lose weight and how to raise our children. The list goes on. There's loads of advice, yet despite having more advice than ever, we're not necessarily becoming any wiser, are we? We're not becoming any wiser as it goes on. Sometimes all the advice simply leaves us, like with Martin Lewis, a bit more confused than we were to start with. Often. Anyone else feel that way? Like, do you feel that way? You just got this bombardment of advice of what we should do, and you're like, I don't even know if left and right is up, and we just get lost. And so, if we live in an age of endless advice, what we actually need is not more information, is it? We don't need more advice. We don't need more of that, but instead, we need wisdom. We need wisdom to go along with it, which is why we are in this summer series, and we're going to be in the book of Proverbs. We're not necessarily working through it systematically, so each preacher, they might have a verse they might camp in, but really we're going to be all over the place in the book, and that's going to be the same today. And we're going to be exploring the people of Proverbs. So, hence the name, the People of Proverbs. We're going to be looking at the different type of people that are described through metaphors and descriptive language to describe how we are to live, the way humanity was made to live by looking at the different types of people that seem to crop up through the book of Proverbs. But I've got a question for us to start, just to help us a little bit, and it is this: what's Proverbs about? What is it about? What's going on? Well, thankfully, Proverbs is not just more advice. It's not more life hacks. We don't need any of that. Instead, Proverbs, it is an invitation from God to become the kind of person who knows God, understands his world, and walks in his ways. Hence why we've called it the way of wisdom. Throughout the book that we'll see, and throughout this series as we will see, there are different people. There are different kinds of people who are examples of different ways to live. Today, we're going to be looking at one particular person, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but there's the naive person who is described in Proverbs. There's the angry one. There's the fool. There's loads of different types of people who demonstrate different ways of living, which are sometimes good, sometimes not so good, and we have to hold them in tension as well as we go through. And today's person we're going to be looking at is the wise. Right? Why start with the good one? Because number one, I get to choose who preaches what, and I'm choosing that one. But no, the way we want to look at the wise, because Proverbs throughout the whole of the book is always calling us, the reader, you and me, towards one destination, and it is this. What's Proverbs about? Proverbs is taking us in one destination, the way of wisdom. That's where it's pointing us towards. The theme and the purpose of Proverbs in this series is to grow in the way of wisdom, to begin to turn from our foolishness and then walk in the way of wisdom. The wise is the main person in this book. The wise is the person we're to aspire to in the book of Proverbs. And so today, as I said, we're not working through particular passages, but I just want us to look at Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1, and helpful if I had got that up, wouldn't it? And we're going to just be in verses 1 to 7. And verses 1 to 7, it summarizes the way of wisdom really well, which is why I want to camp there. But it says this. The Proverbs of Solomon, so Solomon wrote this book, okay? The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, and these are what it's for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance for understanding proverbs and parables and the sayings and the riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. It's just a great place to start. And so to help us grasp where we're going with the way of wisdom, the wise person, and what it is to be wise, I want us to explore two massive questions, which we probably won't get to the bottom of. I think we'll spend all eternity getting to the bottom of these questions, but I want to start. What is wisdom, and how do I become wise? That's where we're going to go this morning. What is wisdom, and how do I become wise? What is wisdom? What does Proverbs mean when it talks about gaining wisdom? That verse 2 about gaining wisdom. What's that? And then how do I become wise? How do we move from simply hearing about wisdom to actually walking in it? To going through life being somebody who is more wise than they were before? How do we do that? And so let's first of all look at what is wisdom. And so I've got a lot of points, but they're not really long. Okay, so don't panic. I've got a lot of points, but they're not really long. And the first thing is, wisdom is not just information, knowledge, and morals. It's not gaining more of that. I said that already, right? Did you know we have more information in this generation than any in history, right? Google processes around 8.5 billion searches a day. I think we got enough information around us, right? And there is now, I don't know the official figure, but it is over 1 billion separate websites. So not like you go to BBC and then on BBC you can get to sport, you can get to weather. No, they're totally separate websites. Right, there's over 1 billion separate websites on the internet. So we've got 8.5 billion searches and over 1 billion separate websites on the internet. And we get stuff like this. You might not be able to see it very well, right? This is Long Doggy Challenge. Right, this is a website, a useful website. And what you do, you've got an option on it to click to print it if you want to print it. There's down the bottom, you can't see it, don't worry. It says, do you want to see how I made this website? So you get some more, it takes you another website to see that. But what it is is you just scroll. Like you just scroll and the dog just gets longer. And it says wow at different points as you scroll down. That's it. That's all it does. Right? We've got 1 billion websites and one of them's that. You just scroll. Just don't do anything. No videos, no picture. It just goes wow as you scroll down. Just totally pointless. Also, they spelled doggy wrong. Exactly. Right. This is what we have. All right? My point is this. You can be skilled, but you can create really pointless things. Right? You can be educated. You can be really well educated, but utterly foolish. Right? You can have high morals, but you can still make damaging decisions. You can be an internet genius and create gumph like this. Right? That's what I'm talking about. Wisdom is not simply having more information and more knowledge and more morals. That's not what wisdom is. Instead, wisdom is knowing how to live well in God's world. That's what wisdom is. The Hebrew word which is used in Proverbs for the word wisdom is chokmah. Chokmah. So let me just define that word a little bit to help us understand what wisdom is. Chokmah, wisdom, means the skill of taking what we know about God, what we know about his world, what we know about ourselves as well, and applying it to practical living. Right? So this means that wisdom is not something that we're just born with. You're not born wise. Right? My children are not as wise as me. It's just fact. All right? Or don't snigger too much. All right? But this means, right, wisdom is not something we're born with, it's something we grow in. And we only can grow in it because we know who God is. We realize who God is. We learn more about what God is like. Proverbs 1:5, we read it, let the wise listen and add to their learning. Right? The reality is that life is full of moments where there is not a simple verse that tells us exactly what to do. So, for example, we know not to kill somebody, right? Because it says in Exodus, you shall not kill. Right? It tells us, we're told specifically, don't do this or do this on some occasions. But there's some things in life which it doesn't do that with. Right? The Bible doesn't tell us what job I should take. The Bible doesn't tell me who I should marry. How do I parent a particular child with a particular need? How do I use my money after I've given as much of it away as I can? How do I do that? Right? These decisions, these moments in our life, they require more than information, more than morals, more than knowledge. They require me to listen. They require me to learn. They require chokmah. They require me to apply how to live in God's world. And I can only begin to do that, right? I can only begin to use chokmah, right, and apply it in how to live in God's world by first of all knowing God's way. I can't apply it in God's world without knowing God himself. And so wisdom discerns the better way. Wisdom discerns the better way. Wisdom is learning to see life as God sees it. It's discerning life around that one truth of who God is. Have you seen that not everything in life is black and white? Have you discovered that yet? Everything in life is not black and white. Right? You can know what right is, but you can still lack the wisdom to apply it. Can't you? Right? I know it is not right for me to speed. I sometimes lack the wisdom to apply it. You know what I mean? And so Proverbs tells us that wisdom begins with something deeper. Wisdom begins with something deeper than a knowledge and information, a moral, or just even knowing how to live in God's world. It is actually deeper than that. Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Sort of a rephrasing of verse 7 in chapter 1. The fear of the Lord is beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. The foundation of wisdom is not simply better decision making. It is right relationship with God. It is knowing who God is and living that out. So what is wisdom? Wisdom begins by recognizing that God made the world, knows how it works, and therefore knows how we should live. As Forrest Frank says, Lord, I need you now more than ever. Would you put my heart back together? I've searched the world till my head hurts to find out your ways better. Wisdom is not about becoming a better version of ourselves as the world would call us to. Instead, wisdom is about becoming the kind of people who know God, who trust God, and walk in the ways of God, and walk with God through this world. So before we jump to the question of how do I become wise, I just want to ask you to ask yourself something. Ask yourself this question: which of those areas is God speaking to you about today? Am I trying to get more information because that's going to make me wiser? Am I open to learning from God's correction and his instruction? How much am I connecting with the source of wisdom? How much are you doing that? They're challenging questions for all of us. These apply to all of us. If we want to know what wisdom is, we need to connect with the one who is wise. So how do I become wise? How does that happen? How does God take people like you and like me, right, who we naturally, whether we realize it or not, and we'll get to this a bit later, but who naturally we lean towards foolishness? And how do we grow into people who walk in the way of wisdom? Firstly, Proverbs 2, 4-5, actually 4-6, show us we need to pursue wisdom. We need to pursue it. We need to look for it. It says in Proverbs 2, if you seek it, wisdom, if you seek it, I think I've got it on screen. If you seek it like silver and search for it like hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord. You will find the beginning of wisdom. If you seek it, you will find. God tells us that. And find the knowledge of God. Wisdom doesn't just pop up accidentally. Right? Just like someone searching for treasure, we're called to actively pursue wisdom by growing in God. But then there is an important paradox. There is a switch here we've just got to have in our mind. We've got to balance all this out. Rather than going, I just got to ask and I'm going to get it, it's not quite how it works completely, all right? Verse 6, for the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. It's important to grasp. We pursue wisdom. That's our role. Our role is to pursue wisdom, but we got to know where it comes from. Right? It comes from God. Only God gives it. That's the important tension, because becoming wise is not about trying harder. It's not about becoming a better version of ourselves. Becoming wise begins by coming to God, the source of all wisdom, and allowing him to shape us. The question isn't, how do I become wiser? It's actually not a helpful question I'm asking today. It's not, how do I become wiser? The deeper question is, am I staying close to the one who gives wisdom? Am I connecting with the one who gives wisdom? My children, they want money all the time, all right? So what do they need to do? They need to know me. They know who they are as children, and they're like, can I have a tenner? And I'm like, no, because I'm not giving you any money. But God is a good God, all right? He's not like me. They stay close to me. They live in my house. Right? We are a household. Right? We need to be in the source. We need to be close to the one who gives wisdom. So how do I become wise? Firstly, pursue it, but then trust in God more than yourself. Right? How do I become wise? I need to trust in God more than myself. Proverbs 3, 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him. And what will he do? He will make your paths straight. Just to say one thing very, very quickly. When we read Proverbs, it's very positive. So that verse there, if you submit to God, he'll make your path straight. Absolutely true. But you've also got to read it alongside Job. Right? Job loses everything. He is faithful to God and he loses everything. We've got to understand that he gives and he takes away. That's who God is. But that's why we need to trust God more than ourselves. Job, yes, his paths were straight, but they weren't straight in the way he wanted them to be straight. But he trusted in God more than himself. And so just a caveat, whenever we're talking about Proverbs, when the wise, it's often very positive. If you do this, then this will happen. No, we need to balance it with Ecclesiastes. Meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Joys of joys. Trust in the Lord more than yourself. Notice the contrast in chapter 3. Right, the wise person isn't the one with all the answers, but it's the one who trusts God more than themselves. The reality is that every one of us is trusting something. Our culture says, trust your heart. Our culture says, you are enough. You're enough. Right? Believe in yourself. Proverbs is very countercultural, and it tells us that our hearts are not always trustworthy. We can't trust our heart all the time. Right? Because the things we trust most become the things that control us. What are you beginning to trust too much? What are you beginning to put your hope in too much? Is it success, money, reputation, comfort, relationships? It's when those things that are threatened that we discover how much we've been relying on them. We begin to grow wiser when we trust God more than ourselves, because God is not just part of my life. God is the foundation of my life. Where are you trusting yourself more than God? How do I become wise? By being teachable. By being teachable. We can become wise when we become teachable. One of the biggest barriers to wisdom, is thinking that we've already got it. I'm already wise. I already know. Have you seen these grey hairs? This is a crown of wisdom. He told me last week. This is a crown of wisdom. I've got it. No. The foolish person of Proverbs is not the wise one. Proverbs 1:5, let the wise listen. Always got to be listening, whether we're 100 or children, all right? We've got to be listening. Got to have our ears open. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let discerning get guidance. If you want to be wise, shut up and open your ears. The wise, they listen to God's word. The wise listen to godly people. The wise allow others to speak into their life in things that they're like, I don't like you saying that, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to own it. Wisdom is not formed in isolation. That's why we need the church. That's why we need one another to do that. Sometimes God grows wisdom through reading scripture. Sometimes God grows wisdom through the experience of others. Sometimes God grows wisdom through our mistakes and our failures. But we have to be willing to be taught. We have to be willing to be taught by him. Who in this church have you given permission to speak into your life? Do you allow people to challenge your way of living, the decisions that you're making, the direction of travel that you are going in? If the only voice we listen to is our own, we will never, ever grow in wisdom. How do we become wise? Respond while wisdom calls. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20 to 29, right, there is a warning shot made. If we're thinking about putting off, I'll sort that out later. I'll focus on growing in wisdom later. So in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20, wisdom is pictured as a woman shouting in the street, calling out. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the markets, she raises her voice. And then we read a bit later on in verse 28 and 29, then they call upon me, but I will not answer. because they hated knowledge and they did not choose the fear of the Lord. This is a warning for us, right? We should not assume we can ignore God or our need to grow in wisdom the whole of our lives, and then when crisis comes, suddenly jump at the genie. Wisdom is built over time. It's built over time. I don't become this physically fit overnight, right? This has taken years to develop. Nobody becomes a skilled musician overnight, right? They don't know how to play piano or drums or guitar or bass or to sing unless they've worked at it. Wisdom isn't built in a crisis. It can be, right? But it is built long before the crisis. Wisdom is built long before the crisis comes. Are you responding now to wisdom by building habits that will shape how you respond when life gets hard? Habits such as accountability with church members, people just knowing what's happening in your life, praying for you, working out your salvation alongside you. You growing in the knowledge of God through training, through devotional time, through prayer time, through moments like that. The habits and wisdom we build now will shape how we respond when crisis comes. Not the other way around. Because wisdom is not just about what we know, it's about how we live as well. We need to allow for change. We need to allow for change to happen in ourselves. Proverbs 3 says how it shows us in different places how the wise person lives, and it has affected every area of their life. All right? So, and how they think and how they behave. So Proverbs 3 verse 9, the wise person recognizes that everything has come from God, and so they live generously. So it's changed how they think about money in verse 9. And then in verse 11, the wise person knows that difficulty is not always evidence that God has abandoned them. Sometimes God uses suffering to shape us and strengthen us and draw us closer to Him. So they know, right, wisdom has changed how they respond to suffering. And in verse 27, wisdom changes how they treat other people. Right? The wise person doesn't simply ask, what can I get? But how can I love? How can I serve people that God has placed around me? How can I do that? Changes us. All right? We need to allow change to happen in our life. We can't expect to grow in God and grow in wisdom unless we're going to allow God to change us and shape us completely differently. How do I become wise? By becoming the kind of person who naturally lives the right way, because we are orientated around the wise one. In a very short time, right, I've tried to answer two huge questions, right? What is wisdom and how do I become wise? There's way more to this. Tim Keller's got an excellent devotion. If you're like, I'd like a new devotional, Tim Keller has wrote a Proverbs devotional, which he answers these kinds of questions. It's stunning. Just a beauty. If you just want to get into Proverbs over the summer yourself, get that book, read it, and let it just melt your heart for God. You'll be so blessed by it. Just encourage you with that. If you want to know about it, come and ask me. I'll show you where you can get it. But I've tried to answer those questions, these deep, difficult questions. But what is wisdom? Right? Wisdom is knowing God, understanding His world, and learning to live in His ways. And how do I become wise? By pursuing God's wisdom rather than my own. Seeking Him. So I want the band to come up. But as we finish, the New Testament reveals something wonderful about Proverbs. The New Testament reveals something wonderful about the wise person. The wise person that Proverbs describes, if I go back very quickly, that list, how do I become wise? That's really hard. Right, the wise person feels impossible. Feels like that is really quite impossible. But then Paul writes, in 1 Corinthians, Paul writes, Christ, the wisdom of God. The truly wise person that Proverbs is describing is Christ. Jesus is the wise one. So whenever you're reading Proverbs and you see the word wise, put Jesus in there. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you'll see, oh, that's what Jesus is like. Jesus is the wise one. He perfectly trusted and pursued the Father. He submitted to God's word. He perfectly lived for the good of others. He gave everything away to change all history and our relationship with God forever. Proverbs 8 pictures wisdom calling out. So it's trying to go far. It's calling out. They're far away. It's calling. But what does Jesus do? In Jesus, wisdom doesn't simply call them. Wisdom goes to them. Wisdom comes near. Wisdom doesn't come merely to give better advice, but to rescue us, the fools. Our deepest problem is not a lack of good advice or knowledge. Said at the start, we've got 8.5 billion Google searches a day. We don't need more advice, more information. Our deepest problem is not that. Our deepest problem is that we have trusted ourselves instead of God. The good news of the gospel, the good news of Jesus, is that Jesus came to take our foolishness and give us wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is knowing God, knowing his world and understanding his way. This is only possible. This is only made available through the person of Jesus. How do I become wise? Well, by acknowledging my foolishness and trusting that I am his and he is mine. That Jesus changes everything in me. The wisest thing any of us can do is to know him, trust him, and walk in him. I want to leave you with a question. Do you know the one who is wisdom? Do you know the wise one? Not simply do you know about him? Do you know the Bible stories? Do you know those parables that he wrote? Do you know the wise one? Do you know him? Do you orientate everything that you do around him? I don't think I do. I don't think I do enough. And so what I want us to do, why don't we stand and we're going to sing a song. I don't know what song we're going to sing, but we'll sing a song. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fear here is not trembling at a ghost or something like that. This is awe and wonder. That's what fear means here. Awe and wonder of just, I'm just in awe of who you are, God. Do you know him that way? Just as the band play, I just want to give an opportunity this morning for you to come and recommit or commit for the first time to him. Why don't we, just to be sensitive to those around the room, why don't you close your eyes? This isn't something uber spiritual. It just in some ways helps us to connect with God. Let's close our eyes, and if you feel comfortable, why don't you put your hands out? It's just a way of saying, God, I'm open to you. In your own heart, ask yourself the question, do you know the one who is wisdom? Not about him, do you know him? Just across the room, I feel the Holy Spirit. He's wanting to minister to you. He's wanting to encourage you to know him more, to engage with him afresh, to know him anew. If you feel God just ministering to you right now, why don't you start to talk to him, even for the first time, the first words may be, I'm sorry, you have not been my first. Jesus, will you meet us right now where we are? As a collection of people across the room, I pray, will you minister right into our hearts right now? Will this be a day, over these summer holidays even, that we go deeper than we have ever been before? Come, oh God.